the chain.
Welcome to another episode of Off the Chain podcast with your favorite host, I'm Nene. And today we have a superstar. Our guest has over 20 years in the industry. He's also a pioneer. Oracle invited him to the League of the Java Champions way back in the 2007. He has written two books which are currently available on Amazon, guys. So, check it out. The books are Java EE Developer Handbook and Digital Java EE Web Application Development. And wow, our guest is none other than Peter Pilgrim. Hi, Peter. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Amil?
Very well. I've been enjoying the sun. I played some golf yesterday. Right.
Right.
So, I'm really happy to have on the show. Okay, really
Yeah.
happy to have on the show, and our listeners will really enjoy this because just your profile is like, wow, right, and your experience as well, which will be really good as well. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Welcome, listeners, wherever you are in the world, and hope you're getting through this epic period in humanity. So, about me, I've been developing software since the early 1980s, from home computers, and went to university, got a degree. What else is there to say? Started professionally coding in Fortran 77, believe it or not.
Okay.
Unix, C. Eventually, in the late 90s, got into this thing called Java,
Mhm.
which is a new language. I wanted to be a C++ guru. And then I've been with Java for, gee, over 20 years. I still get a buzz
Wow.
out of programming with Java. And of course, there's a lot has
Mhm.
changed in the decades. There's Scala, there's
Mhm.
Kotlin, there's Groovy, and yeah, loads and loads.
I mean, the JVM become a platform on its own,
Yes, it
right?
has. They say it's the crown jewels of the platform. So yeah, so it's JVM is definitely meant to be a platform.
There's always new languages. Some popular, you mentioned Scala, Groovy, and some more obscure. But there's a lot of languages that are running on the JVM, which is good. So you saw Java, the whole ecosystem evolve over the years. New features coming in. Remember Java Web Starts, where you can have Java applets on your browser. So you come from there to now, Java just being stuck in the backend now. It looks like.
Yeah, so for me it was the front end course. So
Mhm.
it was an accidental discovery. For me, I had changed jobs and I got into Java because somebody dropped out of a Java course,
Mhm.
and I attended this course thinking I'm going to be learning C and C++. And
Mhm.
then the realization with Java, it was portable. So there are three pillars of Java. The first pillar is the portability,
Mhm.
bytecodes. The second one was it was internet capable, so sockets and network. And the third one nobody really talks about is security, the sandbox. So,
Mhm.
so that was really important in the 1998, where you were downloading code to run on an applet browser. Yeah, so and from there everything took off into I developed Java Swing applications for the bank because that was the new technology.
Mhm.
Then and then all of a sudden, the server side of Java took off with something called J2EE or Java 2 Enterprise Edition. And when it started, it was horrible to code with. Yeah, I could drill down into lots there. Okay, the world was smaller back in the 90s at the turn of the century, millennium. Uh, a lot of code was closed source. There was open source if you come from the Linux. and the Free Software Foundation, the various Linux distributions.
Hmm.
Ubuntu was going, Susie was going, Debian was going, and Java was closed source. It's not like it was open today. And you could get something called Black Down Java. And I managed to get this version of Java up on a an old Windows laptop. And that the way you did it, then you dual booted your laptop machine. It cost two and a
Wow.
half thousand pounds and
Oh, wow.
a
Uh,
12-inch screen like that. And I installed SUSE Linux and managed to get Java working. So I could
mhm.
develop at home. So this is pre-fiber, pre-broadband, dial-up
Ooh,
over,
must be
yeah,
painful.
like, yeah. But actually, if you remember, I was been developing since floppy disk, long before USB
Hmm.
sticks became uh, fashionable or usable. And I can remember I took at the bank, I downloaded Java over the ISDN or T1 link,
Hmm.
and it could fit on JDK 1.4 or 1.5, could fit on 10 floppy disks. And there was a trick I used in Linux to split a file into 10 pieces. So a floppy disk was something, the maximum it could take was 1.4 megabytes. So 10 floppy disks, and you copied it,
Hmm.
inserted the floppy disk one by one, and it took me 10 goes. When I got home, I could
Install it.
copy the stuff, and then if you know Unix and your Linux, you can concatenate all these files together. And of course, I use gzip compression
Mhm.
uh, or bzip too. So it's a
I mean, for
it's
just to do that, right? You need to be a
yeah,
power user, right? You almost need to have God mode on your Linux to
yeah.
understand
So
breaking those files and bringing them back together. Today we have all those download manager that do that for us, so we don't actually think of
yeah,
breaking anything. Actually, we never actually think about breaking anything. We just download it
no,
straight, right? And most of the time, it downloads within a couple of seconds.
yes, it's
Uh,
just really fast yeah, now these
oh
days.
wow! So what I wanted to talk about on the show today was, still Java around cloud native, right? Especially coming from where you mentioned there, even Spring EJBs. Uh, as a Java developer, a lot of people listening are also juniors. A lot of them will be advanced users, veterans, but there's a lot of juniors listening to the show as well. So what does cloud native mean to a junior Java developer?
For
Can
me,
you help on that?
m- my opinion of cloud native is that you're building Java software that is targeting a cloud environment. I should
Mm-hmm.
really say cloud-like. Some individuals and companies will use the public cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Some will use on-premise cloud and will have maybe Kubernetes or OpenShift or maybe some private deployment method. So you're building applications for failure.
Mm-hmm.
You're still building applications for scalability, and that usually entails microservices. So you've got all the 12 factor apps to
Mm-hmm.
scalability and accountability, logability, that sort of things.
Okay. So let's talk about what you're working on at the moment.
For me, I'm helping a client build an application for their cloud. So I'm using Java 11 these days. Um, a
Long
month
term,
ago, I
long
was
term
using
support.
Java 8, and I'm using Angular 8 or 9. So I am now full stack, as they say. Of course, I'm stronger on the Java side than I am on the Angular side, but
Mhm.
I have built my share of responsive websites. So I know my way around HTML5,
Mhm.
JavaScript, um, the modern JavaScript, and CSS3. So, so I guess that's where I am these days.
So what part of the technology now, are you looking forward to? Is it actually before I ask you that, you mentioned that on the Java side before you were interested a lot on the front end side of things on the Java. Okay, but now you're using Angular. How come you didn't stick to another Java front end like JSF?
Yeah, well, this is a client decision. I
Okay.
think I think JSF is was great for the time,
Mm-hmm.
but now I'm not quite sure, and I may be wrong, how it fits into the responsive web world. I haven't seen what the Turkish. Uh, I don't know if he's a Java champion, but he's well known
Is
as a
it
pri-
Chatter from
chatty
Prime Face?
prime
Yes, he was on the
face.
show. He came on the
Yeah,
show as well. Uh,
I may have met him over 10 years ago because I
mhm.
used to run a user group, and he w- talked about a Java Web user group in London. I don't live in London
Mhm.
anymore. And I do remember somebody talking about prime faces. So, yeah. So for me, I did write about JSF from my digital Java EE7 book. Uh,
Mhm.
I would find it a little bit challenging now to you to recommend JSF at this point. Uh, I think for toolability, I'm not sure if IntelliJ really supports it well enough with
Mhm.
the hot JVM loading. I mean, and that's personal experience.
Mhm. Yes,
And
there's a project that I'm doing for a startup, and the front end is actually on JSF, but still using Bootstrap, and so Bootstrap handles uh, the responsiveness, so responsive web part. But yes, you mentioned getting the right tool to work. NetBeans was great, but we moved to IntelliJ IDE, and the support there is IntelliJ is great, right? It's probably one of the best idea out there, right? But it also has its challenges, especially as you mentioned that it support the framework good enough, well enough for you to save some time, right? So you don't spend too much time trying to tinker around, try to fix stuff, right? Well, yes, and the question was that okay, so came from the spring. You already mentioned that cloud built for failure, right? And the question I was going to ask you is there new technologies or new development that you see in the ecosystem that's excites you? I mean, there's Jakarta EE now instead of the Java EE. So we moved away from the Oracle dominance, or tight grip, or Oracle influence will still be there, I believe. Right? I don't think that that's going away, is it?
no, it's a funny thing with Oracle. Yeah, I don't think it's going to well. I think Jakarta EE is the new version of Java EE, and it's still going to be the basis of many libraries, including
Mm-hmm.
Spring Boot and Spring Framework. There's JPA still in there, and I'm glad that that story is continuing. And
Mm-hmm.
however, if you look at the job search market, you won't find many job ads. If someone finds something, I'd be happy to know too,
Mm-hmm.
as somebody is using the micro profile, uh, but or Jakarta EE9, or yeah,
Mm-hmm.
at the moment, yeah, the
Yes.
mileage may vary. Uh, it,
The problem that we get with that is that a lot of those job spec, job description are
yeah,
not written by text. Right? So it's not really tech is writing them. So, and if you see on LinkedIn a lot of conversation saying, I need someone with 12 years experience in Kubernetes. Wow, 12 years experience in Kubernetes. Where does that come
I've
from?
seen
Right?
that one as well. Like,
All right. So
yeah,
it tells you that the person that's writing it doesn't probably is not much invested into the actual technology as a developer or an architect. So and they might still refer to it as Java or just Java EE. Now you see a lot of cloud using Java. So are they talking about Java SE or Java EE? Right? All this is microservices Java. So you will think, okay, microservices and Java. I will take a wild guess and say is EE Enterprise, Enterprise Edition, but it could just be something else, right? So the people writing those job descriptions now, you have to people who just go with just one keyword, say, okay, I'm looking for Java.
yeah.
All right. So if Java appears, then it's great, right? The macro profile movement, as you mentioned there, is still kind of new, right? It's still kind of new, and if you look at the likes of IBM, are part of it. Red Hat, I like Red Hat. Now they move to IBM. I'm sure that they will do well.
Yeah.
I have to say that for some reason that I will probably tell you offline. All
Mm.
right. So the macro profile brings us back to the cloud native for Java, right? Now, Java, the way Java was built before, was great. Right? It did its work back then when we had all those monolithic application, whatever application that we had, about deploying on a single server. But when moving to the cloud, you say you have to build for failure, right? And you have to build for scalability, you have to build for observability, right? And those were no first class citizen, right, of Java. For example, if you look at just at the security aspect of Java in terms of authorization and authentication,
Mm.
Java gives you a framework, and then you have to build your own on top,
Hmm.
right, in terms of the JAS, right? Now, with the likes of Macro Profile, there's some other projects as well. Apart from Macro Profile, there's another project called Sotoria, I think.
Yeah.
Sotoria, which looks at the authentication with the JWT tokens and OF2, which I think Java was lacking. Not that you couldn't do in Java, but it would take you more time to do in Java.
Hmm.
Or if you want to another, I don't know if you're familiar with Ballerina as an example, right? And Ballerina has all those tools already available for you. Saves
Hmm.
you time. Right. So now we're trying to have this save people time and time to market. But then, we also have to look at the likes of DevOps, right? Or where it makes sense. All right. So what's your view on that and the new practice as well? Because there's a lot more DevOps stuff now. We kind of move away from the days of CVS and Subversion to Git being almost the main source code repository now. So what's your view on DevOps?
And, well, yeah, on developer operations. So
Mm-hmm.
it's good. I have not seen it practiced like in the Phoenix book, or what was alluded into the Phoenix book, which is um, yeah, where the CTO, he's not quite the CTO, and I forget the names, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually gets rid of the guy who's got all the knowledge, Brent. So
Mm-hmm.
I think Java engineers should know about infrastructure in some shape or form, but then it depends on the culture and the organization,
Mm-hmm.
really, and because I guess the clients that the previous client, I should say, yeah, they were spinning up individually, allowing teams to have a Kubernetes environment.
Mm-hmm.
And they were using Golang, so you had responsibility. But other organizations want that infrastructure controlled by the architecture team. And therefore, everything is ready from the Jenkins to the Circle CI to the provisioning. You don't really have to do much except know how to configure a pipeline, and maybe those things are taken away. Um, yeah, so you just need to be aware as an engineer at the
Yeah.
very minimum. But depends on your shop. If your shop is small, then you don't have a big administrative operational team. And so you have to get under the covers and know what kubectl is, or
Hmm.
OpenShift OC deploy is, and really, because you're going to get a call late at night, it's not working. So that's my view of
Hmm.
it. Technically, with the micro profile, uh, when I was seriously into the Java EE community, what was now Jakarta EE, the thing that Spring Boot has is this Uber jar or runnable jar.
Hmm.
So I don't even know if Jakarta EE or even micro profile have now standardized how one creates Uber jars. That
Hmm.
is runnable jars that you
Hmm.
just then would put into a Docker container,
Yeah.
or
I can
oh,
confirm that they have it.
okay, that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we use Payara, right? But you could do it. The Java ecosystem is really evolving in the right direction, I think. So you could create an Uber jar, and you could even go one better with a GraalVM. Uh, so with the GraalVM, you could actually create a native application,
yeah,
and you just run it using your shell, right? So
yes.
that's something that we deployed at some of the clients as well. And funny enough, we had one of the clients that we were discussing with in the past, and working with Red Hat as we're not working. They were working with Red Hat, and Red Hat was never telling them about their own tools that they can use to create a native image. But now Red Hat has a clear roadmap, all right, where the product fits into the overall strategy. And the product is actually Quarkus. I'm not sure if you come across it.
I
So
certainly hear it in the background in my
mhm,
Twitter feed, and
yes.
a lot of talk and excitement around it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I suppose I hear it from the Spring Boot podcast that I have listened to, that
Mhm.
they're researching how Spring Boot could
Yes.
launch from it,
Mhm.
and of course I understand the issue is that Spring and like Java E or Jakarta EE relies on reflection.
Mhm.
So you're, yeah. How do you know ahead of time what classes you need? You I don't know. That
Uh,
is a technical challenge that one has to, I suppose, run the application and take a freeze, and then
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, the first spring, I saw the spring guys have all released this. I won't even call it a beta yet. I would say alpha, an
Mhm.
alpha release of the code that you just mentioned around using GraalVM again. So they use GraalVM under the hood. Not just them, there's a Micronaut as well, which is another framework, which is more aligned with Spring actually. So if you're a Spring developer, I would say that don't look. Well, you can look at Quarkus, but Micronaut would be probably more appealing because you use the same structure as Spring. If you're Oracle house, Oracle shop, Oracle also has their own. I forgot what that one's called now, but they have their own one as well. But if you're from a Java EE background and you don't do much Spring, then Quarkus would probably be the best one. And
Yeah.
Quarkus also implements a macro profile, but they all have their own thing. And this is where uh, Java, this is where I probably see where Java is going with this, right? Because what they're doing is that not only you can do the native image, but you can also start writing application using you could write command line application,
Yeah,
right?
we know
So
that
which is a
with
good thing.
Java 11, and yeah, and
Hmm.
the
So
J-Link. Yeah,
so which is really good because as a Java developer, if you want to write something very nice, you know, a terminal-based application, you probably need to look in something like Python, all right? But if you can do it in Java, why not?
yeah. Yeah. In the middle of my Java history, I would say from 2007 to 2011, I was looking at Java effects, which is
Ah,
the
yes.
GUI sign. So it's quite interesting that the dream was to be able to write applications that could run on an iPhone,
Hmm.
and so yeah, that. Yeah, so or an Android device, and I know that one of the Belgian guys, Dr. Voss, has actually achieved that. So
Hmm.
congratulations to him.
Yes, it's the when
Johan
they did
Voss.
when they had Robot VM, I think it's called
Yeah, yeah,
Robot VM.
Glue His the
Yeah,
company's called Glue or yeah, Glue
so Glue One HQ, which is the web, right? And they're pushing a lot of that Java FX into iOS. Not sure how many people actually use it. To be
Yeah,
frank with you, there's so many framework out there for Google even have I think the one is called Flutter,
yeah,
right,
I've heard of
which
that.
allows you Android and iOS, right? And there's too many frameworks out there. So depending who you're marketing it to,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, it depends on your application, really.
That's correct.
Yeah, really.
But that's quite interesting in all those. So any other things that you're looking at the moment?
Yeah, I'm still. I'd like to use Kotlin in a live project. I kind of used it. I've done Scala, and
Hmm.
at the moment, I have put together a Kotlin test-driven development course out there,
Hmm.
and it started as TDD, but then descended into like middle layer Kotlin. Yeah, so and now I'm thinking that the world needs a non-technical course, so I'm trying
Hmm.
to brainstorm and produce that. Yeah, so this is what I'm working on now.
What's your view on citizen development? So drag and
On
drop.
on
So
what? On pardon?
no code, no code or low code developments. So you know, AWS introduced a platform where you can just drag and drop and rebuild your application. Right. So there's a lot around drag and drop, no code, so anybody can actually do it. Do you think there's any promise in that?
Um, no, well, I don't know. I've seen these kind of environments before, so without seeing it,
Hmm.
I don't know. It sounds to me like old-fashioned case tool, business process
Hmm.
mapping software, where or even a audio sound digital signal processing
Hmm.
application where yeah, before the world of microservice, they had this thing called the event bus, where supposedly you can stick these services, hence service orientated architecture,
Hmm.
put them all together. And of course, there was no network. This was all inside on the premises. So you'll send a message that you've traded with this counterparty. It would go out to cash services and then go out to the settlement. And that was okay in 15 years ago, but we've moved on. And now we have microservices over SOA, M SOA as I call it. And
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know if that's going to be so useful these case tools for maybe simplistic purposes. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, there are lots of, I suppose, consultancies that will offer that to corporations. This is the quick win. Here you can take an input, transform it, and get an output, and we'll be able to do that. But I think developers and engineers are still going to be required because of the architectural requirements. Whatever it is, it's performance versus scalability, performance versus security. If you have too many layers in your architecture, that's going to affect the performance. You have too much security. Yeah,
Well, that reminds me of all the old days of you had all those drag and drops. Like you mentioned, all those case tools, and they say, all right, we will promote this to non-techies. And then you start the project, and most people working with it are techies, right?
mm,
Because the non-techies are not interested,
yeah,
right? And now you brought another tool, you introduce another tool into the project, and you're paying for the license, so you're forcing people to work with it.
Yeah.
Right. So, and what will happen is that a lot of the BA guys will start working on it because the actual technical developers will say, "Oh, we're too busy doing what we're doing." All right. So find someone else to do it. But the tools look pretty cool. There's a Gartner is talking a lot about it, pushing it as well in a lot of the reports around the low code, no code citizen platform, as they like to call it as well. And so let's see where they go with this. Let's see where they go with this. But don't want to take too much of your time,
Oh,
right?
yeah, let's see where it
So,
goes. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the one
right.
disadvantage is that you're in the Amazon world. So good luck if you want to move these servers to Azure or Google.
Oh yes.
So
The-
yeah, and
So
that's
you get vendor locking.
yeah, yes, of course.
Right.
And of course, it's easy to get your data into a cloud. It costs you the bomb. Well, probably haven't checked this recently to get your data out. If you say, "Oh, a year's time, yeah, I
Mhm.
need to get my data out of the cloud," and so, but that's
Well,
another conversation.
yeah, I think because of the locking, people start looking at
Yeah,
multi-cloud
yeah.
because they
Oh
know
yeah,
that oh yes, we got stuck in this now. We can't move away from it. And in a way, that's why Amazon took so long to adapt Kubernetes, right? Because Kubernetes is kind of a direct competition to them, right? If you can just move your infrastructure and run on Kubernetes infrastructure on GKE or Azure,
yeah,
then that could be a problem.
yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Peter. I don't want to take too much of your time. Well,
Okay.
thank you for coming on the show. Uh, and I really enjoyed our conversation, especially around all the history around Java, some of your views as well. And you want to tell people how they can get in touch with you, where they can reach you, any parting words?
Yeah, so you can find me at Peter underscore Pilgrim on Twitter. I have a blog which is www.zenonique.co.uk, and you can find my training courses. So if there's a particular need and you want to do some training, you can see, and I'll send you a VIP ticket if I think you're worthy. And you like you, I haven't been to a do or a club in a long time, but I remember this idea that you get a drink ticket or a VIP ticket, yeah,
Mhm.
which is yeah, it's a lower price ticket, call it that way.
Okay. Thanks, Peter.
Okay,
So everyone, that was Peter Pilgrim, and we really enjoyed your time here. We really enjoyed talking with you. And please look at his books. Check his website. And if you want to check the books, it's Java EE7 Developer Handbook, the first one. Are you going to provide the update to the book?
I've been asked, but no, yeah, it's if you're for a beginner, it's still relevant
Okay.
because the technology is the same, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Uh,
I'm now going to put my efforts into video online training courses. Yeah, now
okay. So
on.
watch this space.
Yeah,
All right. So
yeah.
thanks again, Peter, and thanks for coming to the show. And we really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks, everyone. And this was Off the Chain podcast with your host, Amel Nene. And until then, look after yourself. Thank you.